the end of every dark situation. You knew before you did it, you had a choice, and you made the choice that was the convenient choice. Those things that you want is on the other side of discomfort. And so therefore, what the great lesson for me is listen to your inner self. And it's a battle. It's a battle in yourself in terms of doing what you know is the most true and doing that other thing that said, come on.
Welcome to Unboxed and Fearless with Dr. Natasha. You know, there are certain people you meet in life, or in case good to interview. But today, I am with a guest that is the epitome of that. He's been acting for over 55 years with more than 120 film and television credits. You might recognize him from All My Children, Tyler Perry's For Color Girls, or the original V miniseries. But he'll tell you that's just one dimension of life. He also has been teaching for over 40 years, founded Richard Lawson Studios in Los Angeles, which he insists is not just an acting school, but an empowerment academy. So let's get started because I'm really excited. And we're also going to be discussing his book that we have here, The Artist Roadmap. So let's get started. He just launched the audio version of this, so I'm excited to dive deep today. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
So you have so many accolades, but you present with so much authenticity. You're so humble. You're so approachable. What has inspired you on your journey?
Well, I was very fortunate to, when I first started in show business or acting, I was in college and I was really going to be a lawyer. And, but one thing led to another. Somebody asked me to get involved in a reader's theater thing, and I said yes. That led to me being joining the forensics team, the competitional speech team.
Mm-hmm.
I was state champion, undefeated, and then the drama coach asked me to if I would want to do this musical called Golden Boy, and I was fearless, and it was like, why not? And so I started to learn how to sing, dance, and act. And it was on closing night of that musical that as I was standing on the stage, I had an epiphany. I mean, God spoke to me and said, this is why I put you here. This is your assignment. And that was my purpose. And so from that moment to this moment, I have been on vacation. I have been living my purpose. And so I have never had a need to be motivated by anything other than to continue on my journey, fulfilling my assignment. And basically my assignment is to help people to achieve their dreams. And my acting and everything that I do artistically is a vehicle for that. And so, I enjoy the creation of storytelling to motivate people and to empower them to be the best version of themselves. And so, even when my, life is a roller coaster, this career is a roller coaster. Lou Gossett told me I was going to be discovered 15 times, and he ain't never lied. And so the ups and downs, the downs have never been a stop for me. It's just redirects. And so I have never felt defeated. I felt challenged at best. So I've been thoroughly motivated all these years and have never been less than motivated.
Wow, that's inspirational. So as I reflect to the artist roadmap, you had so many moments in the book that really resonated with me, and mostly what you've trademarked. right?
Mm.
Dreams have no expiration date.
Yes, trademark that. Thank
Oh,
God.
gosh. That means so much to me and on so many different levels, and also to, I'm pretty sure, so many people that will encounter the book.
Yeah.
What inspired you to trademark that, and what did you encounter in life where you felt like that resonated with you?
Well, you know, like my school on the surface, my school is an acting school, but underneath the hood, it really is an empowerment academy, a place where I empower people to achieve their dreams. And what I understand is that, you know, if people are not really clear about their purpose, their North Star, which is kind of like GPS, that no matter what happens to you, it's going to reroute you, but keep you moving towards that North Star. That when people are, lifing and they lose contact with their purpose, if they ever really was aware that they do have a purpose. But sometimes when we lose sight of that, we think all is lost, especially like when you get, you get married, you have kids, you go on, you start working. Most people get a job to make a living, but they're not living the life that they really wanted and they dreamed about. They got a job and they were able to afford their life. And most people max it out. What they make, they spend. And it's like just trying to keep up, right?
Yes.
But they had a dream for something else. And, I did it. I did a really interesting, I was asked to do this seminar for C-suite Black women. And it was like 600 C-suite women in Long Beach at this convention.
Wow.
And these were all women who were chairman, CEO, COO, CFO, blah, 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 right? And so what am I going to tell them? What am I going to, make these women aware? They're already successful. Only to discover that once I did the show and did my thing, and asked them about their dream, and they really sat down and re-examined what their dream was. Their dream was something other than what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
They got a job. They were good at the job. They worked their way up because they kept getting invited to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, to the CEO. But that wasn't their dream, right?
Right.
So one of the most beautiful experiences was teaching these women who were successful women that to help them find their dream and to realize that their dreams don't have expiration dates, that it wasn't too late, that some of those women re-engineered their lives and created and went and chased their dreams and created what their original dream was so that they were able to really do the thing that makes them whole and makes them want to get up every day, and they're not just functioning, being good at something that you didn't really dream about doing.
Right.
And so it's never too late. Age is not a factor. Marla Gibbs started acting at 42, and at 44, she got the Jeffersons, and she's never stopped. And Marla, to this day, when she walks in the room, she's still the youngest person in the room. And Marla's like 95, 96, 97, something like that. But her spirit is just so young because she's attached to her dreams. So it's never too late to rehabilitate or even to imagine for the first time, why you're here,
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the great joys for me was, having the mentorship program and the nonprofit that we created, and we were mentoring 100 kids, and it was really about trying to get these kids to be able to dream beyond their zip code.
Yes.
And once they really realized that they could dream,
Mm-hmm.
and that they started looking at when you start presenting other possibilities and sharing other things with them, and they started to think about what they really wanted to do, it's nothing more beautiful than to see young people, their eyes open up and they can see more for themselves, and they now can use their imagination and that they can originate their life and they can invent the life that they want.
I love that. So we touched on dreams,
Yeah,
and we obviously had a discussion about men's health
yeah,
because we wanted to highlight awareness
yeah,
for prostate cancer.
yeah,
We wanted to obviously discuss with the community how to break through the barriers,
right,
how to access resources,
yeah,
and how to prevent poor outcomes.
yeah,
So for me, that was a very powerful moment
mm-hmm,
because I firsthand encountered so many people that are not well informed.
yeah,
And like you said, and we discussed that prostate cancer could easily be prevented.
the most preventable one.
So let's talk about that. Have you had any people within your life that have been diagnosed? What does it mean for you to be an advocate on this topic?
Well, in the greater scheme of things, the one of the things that I recognized is that because I've had my own bouts of, emotional roller coasters where, I have been depressed. And the feeling of when I look at pictures of myself when I was depressed, it was like I didn't even recognize that person. And that's not the person that I wanted to be. And I looked at that, and I looked at my own health, and how tired I was, and how big I was, and my numbers were climbing, and I needed blood pressure medicine, and I needed cholesterol medicine, and my testosterone was low, and that's not who I was. That's not what I wanted to be. And so when I started taking a look at my own personal health and self-care,
Mhm.
and I got up and I started doing something about it and working out and losing that weight and changing those numbers, my blood pressure was like, you know, 160 over one 90, 890, 100, 110, stuff like that. And working out every day, twice a day, and changing my diet and fasting and doing intermittent fasting and dropping down, my numbers started to drop. And then, and then I had an enlarged prostate, and I had family members that had prostate cancer, and know people with prostate cancer, and my mother died from diabetes. It was like,
Mm.
I don't want to give in to gravity. I don't want gravity to start taking me down because my sense of self is being reduced. My passion for life does not exist. My positivity is buried in the fact that I'm not liking myself. So it was like, it's important for me to change that. And as I began to change that and share that, I began to really, people started reaching out to me saying, "Hey, man, you're an incentive. You, I'm following you. I want to do what you do. You've given me the impetus to get up and stuff like that." And I see the importance of the kind of ministry that, that loving yourself, taking care of yourself can create for others. Because ultimately, and I also look around at how people, the gradient down, and how you can change that, and you can die a natural death that is from living well, as opposed to having that curve be sharper so that you crash and burn. And so with prostate cancer, it's the most curable of all cancers. And so what's preventing, and why do we have the highest degree of it? And it's through, kind of an ignorance, and there's dynamics to it. Uh, we as Black men don't communicate. We want to hold up a certain kind of image to ourselves. the idea of being examined, certainly in the traditional way, where they stick a finger in your anus and they feel your prostate, and the idea of that is like was taboo, and the whole aspect of the homophobia that comes with the nuances of that, and we don't want to communicate to the people how we feel, our loved ones, and I have always been, an open person. People tell me you're too open. You need to keep more close to the vest. That's not who I am. You know what I mean? I've always been the person to share my feelings. I'm not afraid to cry. Crying is healthy. You know what I mean?
It
I'm
is.
ready for a good cry. I'm ready for a good cry. I've been working my butt off. The last couple of years have been rough.
Interesting,
It's
huh?
been, oh baby, you talk about interesting. I don't even have to go into it. You know what I'm talking about. Interesting as hell. But
Interesting.
it's, you know what? I'm down for it. I'm made for it. I was built for it. But health is mental health, and
Powerful, right?
it's powerful. It's so important. So important.
So let's talk about that,
Yeah.
right? Let's talk about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
March 22nd,
Mm-hmm.
1992
92.
was a significant day for you
Yeah.
on your
Mm-hmm.
journey, and you survived a plane crash,
I did.
and 27 people did not.
Yes.
You've said that experience really impacted your life,
Mm-hmm.
and can you talk about that? How did it change you?
Well, what it did was, and I'm still writing about that in other forms. What it did was, see, I knew that plane was going to go down. My spirit was very clear. See, I have these two alter egos. There's Richard, who's a spiritual. He's over here. He's a spiritual person. He has a very short haircut, black horn rimmed glasses, tape in the middle. He knows everything. He just says, "Don't do that. You should do that. This is a good person. You don't want to get involved in that. Don't take that job. Don't go that way. Don't get on this plane. Leave that person alone." And if I follow that, it's always true. And then there's Tricky Dick over here who says, "Hey, man, forget that, man. We going over here. We got somebody we want to see in Cleveland. Don't, pay no attention to that." I was running the drug program for the National Basketball Association, and I was going to work with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And they're hard. Those meetings are hard to get and maintain. So Tricky Dick says, "Yeah, man, listen, what you gonna tell David Stern? You was afraid to fly?" They're gonna say, "Maybe you should be doing something else." Man, don't be afraid. Look, we good, we good. And so I'm between these two voices, the light and the dark, and the good and the evil, if you will. It wasn't quite evil, but there is a certain kind of penchant for the public self, wanting to be liked, wanting to you know, see the latest, do the latest, go down the slippery slope, test the edge, that you ain't gonna fall. And so there's these two voices. And unfortunately, this voice won where I stayed on the plane crashes. So one of the greatest realities in what for me was why we don't listen to that sixth sense, that God voice, that all knowing voice, that discernment, that clairvoyance, the cognizance, claircognizance to follow what we know to be true. Because the interesting thing is that at the end of every dark situation, you knew before you did it. You had a choice, and you made the choice that was the convenient choice. Change is on the other side of discomfort. Those things that you want is on the other side of discomfort. And so therefore, what the great lesson for me is listen to your inner self. nothing has ever happened to me that I didn't know before, but I made the wrong choice because there's something in it that says, no, come on, man, we got this. Let's do this. Whether it be man, woman, situation, friends, whatever. And that night I knew, but I didn't follow. And so the great lesson was to follow. Now, have I followed for the most part? But there are times when I don't. And it's a battle. It's a battle in yourself in terms of doing what you know is the most true and doing that other thing that said, come on, you can get away with this one. You know what I'm saying?
Wow, that's deep. We also spoke about connecting with God.
Yeah.
And I do believe that he gives us discernment.
Yeah.
And life can be loud and we get distracted.
Yeah.
And we sway away from that discernment and his guidance.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. What do you think your God-given purpose is?
My God-given purpose is to, I've had some incredible traumas throughout the course of my life in terms of growing up and where I grew up in every project in Oakland, living with, a single mother who worked 16 hours a day, where I had to be a surrogate father and a surrogate husband, a younger sister. And because of that traveling, I did 1 year was live with my mother, and it was just 16 hours a day. And so she would get tired. I'd go to Riverside, live with my aunt, my mother, my aunt. It was like every other year I was going back and forth, and so my life was, had its challenges. But in terms of I believe that God put these challenges in front of me uh, because he has a bigger mission for me, uh, and to give me the strength to be a guide and a support system to help people know that there's more, and that to help people try to find their best self. And so, he put teaching in front of me. He gave me this big platform so that I can create a kind of, ministry, if you will, of showing people that you can turn chicken shit into chicken salad. You can turn manure into fertilizer. You can process, pivot, and proceed. You can, with radical acceptance, turn anything into the good, because you can't control what happened to you, but you can control how you deal with it. And that you can pass that on. And right now, more than anything else in the world, we need that as a people, because we see where this is going. We see where this country is going. And now it's sort of like, do you sit and be a victim, or do you put it together and say, okay, this is what you need to develop the strength that you need to overcome? I was having a conversation with my cousin today, and I said, it's an interesting thing, because you have all of these fraternities, the alphas and, the kappas and this one and that one, and the sororities, that all are individual groups who do individual things. I said, what would happen if all of those groups got together and worked as one? That is the 10% that E.B. Du Bois, Dr. E.B. Du Bois was talking about, in terms of 10% is going to lead the race. Well, there's the 10 percenters right there. What if they got together and collectively thought about what is possible? And by creating an economic base, because they are all tapped into the economics of this country more than most.
That's right.
And so therefore, that togetherness is a powerful thing. And so, I've never heard anybody create that or think about that. And so it's in terms of, my job here is to empower people. That's what I do. That's what I've always done, even when I was going back to 6 years old. And so I'm clear about my assignment.
You are.
And so therefore, let me continue. God bless the fact that I'm in the #1 streaming show in the world today, Beauty in Black. Well, there's a platform there. And that platform is allowing me the ability to be able to speak to more people about this greater good and this greater thing. It's not about me, it's about, you can't keep it unless you give it away. And so
That's
it's
right.
about me giving it away.